Alrighty. And today on the Going North podcast, we're bringing some fabulous humans from across the globe. Today is no different. Today is no different. Oh, heck, oh, my kid. Today is a different day. It's a different day. It's a special day because it's a nice invasion from the Sacred Stories Media Crew, baby. From crappy to happy. This is going to be from crappy to happy. The international best-selling book with multiple authors from multiple backgrounds of diverse experiences that have sacred stories of transformational joy. And this guest right here, my goodness, if you saw her photos, you're like, man, she just radiates joy because not only is she an author and a fellow keynote speaker, she's also a corporate trainer, forgiveness expert, which is a first for this podcast, as well as a certified death doula, which is another first for this podcast, an interfaith Reverend, and the creator of the trademarked forgiveness algorithm. Yep, you heard that right, folks. And this fabulous lady's mission right here is to bring forgiveness tool to a cynical world that's craving a way to let go of pain and anger. So let's give it up for the fabulous, mighty MT herself, Misty Tyme. How you doing today, ma'am?
I am so excited to be here, and you're the first person to ever call me MT. I think I want to keep that.
There you go.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to have this conversation.
That's right. You get to keep it with both arms and legs if you want to. It gets a big old hug.
You are tons of fun already, and we haven't even dug in deep yet.
Oh yeah, that's right. The shovel's virtual now, so it's all
Yeah,
good.
for everyone.
Oh yeah, you can say that again. Yeah, COVID's like, yeah, buddy. You don't like technology? Well, too bad. Welcome.
Exactly.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, congratulations on all your success and all the success that's to come. And as with all introductions, they're not allowed to be 75 days long. So, mind filling in any cavities that I may have missed?
Well, you pretty much covered it. I'm a Sacred Stories author. I'm also excited about the upcoming Crappy to Happy. And I just love the title so much and all the different stories that are in there. I'm so excited about it. I am a death doula. A lot of people are like, what is that? Um, I have a background in corporate and in medicine. And then I went to seminary and became a reverend. And then, God laughed a little bit when I thought I knew what I was going to do. And then ultimately something big happened in my life, and it had to do with forgiveness. And I'm pretty much a glass half full kind of girl. And I didn't think I was holding that much anger until I was. And that's where the forgiveness algorithm came from. And let me tell you a quick story. I was in a group of other women kind of mentioning this deep need to forgive. And you know what? You know what, Dom? I found out that I'm not the only one. Like, there are other people, actually, everybody who has an unforgiveness issue. And I did a local talk on it, and it was packed with people. And I went, uh-oh, I think I need to go this direction. And that's how that happened.
It's a wonderful thing. And it's really true because there are still some people out there that need to know about true forgiveness. So, for those who don't know about that, mind going deeper into that because we've been trained in multiple ways about it, but I feel like it may not be the correct training. I think we've been given the flat tire training, to be honest.
Right. Oh, I love that. There's so much stuff I'm going to take from you today. Um,
Thou shalt not
ultimately,
steal, darn it. Let me stop.
I if I tell you, is it stealing, really? Um, so,
Love you.
so ultimately, forgiveness has been twisted and turned into a whole bunch of myths and misconceptions of what it really is. And I was stuck in those myself, both in religion and in society. So, I mean, last time I checked, Disney is singing that we're supposed to let it go. Don't worry, I won't sing. I won't do that to anyone.
Oh,
Um, and then also in religion, we hear it all the time that you're supposed to forgive and forget. Have you ever heard that one?
Too many times.
Right. Last time I checked, elephants and people, we don't forget. And there's a really good reason for that. And I teach what that is. It's actually a tool. Forgiveness is a tool that we have been given so that we can learn not to step back into a bad situation. And we can still forgive and still be wrong and right and all those things. So I clear all that up. For example, lots of people think that if they forgive someone, they are letting them out of consequences, right? Well, I always teach that we should let consequences happen. If it's legal consequences, let the justice system handle that. If it's social consequences, you can forgive and not have them over for dinner. You really don't have to, right? Forgiveness really is a tool to help our hearts be happier.
There you go. And I'm so glad you mentioned Disney because I actually planned to make that darn reference in your introduction. I forgot to make it, so you're in my head, and I appreciate it.
Are you going to sing Let It Go? Is the question.
Let it go, let it go. Yeah, and that's probably about it.
Yeah, yeah, I don't even go that far. I have a little microphone in my when there are actually groups of people and I'm speaking in front of them, I have a microphone that does that for me. So
And
ultimately, we need to forgive so that we can feel better and get rid of what I call unforgiveness. And we pick up unforgiveness in all our situations in life, mostly in our love relationships, our families, our spouses, our boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, that type of thing, or even at work. Interpersonal relationships don't always go well. How about for you? How are they with you? Have you had any tough relationships?
nothing on the massive scale. I mean, not not really, nothing too bad. I mean, I had one guy that I probably fought back in high school. That was like my freshman year, but we already patched that up, and that was years ago. So that's probably the only
Well,
thing that comes to mind.
when I start my any of my speaking events, I always come out to the audience and I don't even introduce myself. I just ask, who here has a family? That pretty much does it.
Probably 98% of the people, right?
Right, right. Because, and that's exactly where I was. I came into the world with someone else, not by myself. And I came into the world with a twin brother, and
Hmm.
we were each other's best friend, and we were each other's, I would say, oasis, because we were born into a really rough family, alcoholism and abuse and all that kind of thing. And, that just makes for a crazy childhood. And he was the guy that I hid in the closet with, right? And then as we got older, around our teenage years, he started to turn into the person we used to hide from. So
Mm.
he took on the behaviors of our family, and he was abusive, and he was an alcoholic, and he was a rageaholic. So as an adult, I tried to separate myself from him, and it left me with a lot of sadness and unfulfilled expectations. Most of us have expectations of everybody, and especially the people that we love. And when we pick up unforgiveness, it's when those expectations aren't fulfilled. That's when we pick up the pain, anger, sadness, and my favorite, smoldering resentment. um, was really good at smoldering resentment. And I had that for my twin brother and some of my other family members. Actually, in Crappy to Happy, I write about my mother and that story. And ultimately, when he died, he also, I need to tell you that when he died, he took his own life. And it was sad on so many different levels. And I used to think that if he passed away, I would be fine with it. And we're talking about somebody who's a grief recovery specialist, a death doula, and a reverend. You'd think I would have got the story. I thought I was pretty shiny and that I would be fine. Well, I was wrong. And when I talk to other people who have had sad situations happen to them, divorce or breakups or a rough family life, they kind of had the same story. They kept expecting the person to turn into the person they said they would be to us, or something that they were supposed to do for us, right? And that didn't happen. So that's how we pick up the unforgiveness. And that's what I was filled with: anger, pain, sadness, smoldering resentment for days. And I was desperate for my brother to change. And I just was waiting for him to change so that he could prove how right I was and how wrong he had been his whole life.
Just gotta love it. Gotta love it. It's kind of like the whole classic truth from how to win friends and influence people. Like, hey, we expect others to realize that we are right, and we always love to be right. No one likes to be wrong, and you realize,
Well,
it's not always the case.
have you been on social media lately? I mean, we love to yell how right we are. And there's a
Oh yeah.
really good study out of an institute in the Midwest. It's called the Fetzer Institute. It's fabulous.
Oh
And
wow.
they studied things like love and forgiveness.
Hmm.
And they had a great study that literally asked 1,000 people, do you think forgiveness is a good idea? And guess what? Good news, like 60% said, yes, we want to do this. We want it for our personal lives, our community, and our world. But then they asked some follow-up questions. And I know I would have not done well on these follow-up questions. They said, what do you need to forgive? And guess what? We all want a really good apology. Then we want the person to change. Ultimately, we want the apology so that we can feel, and we talked about this, right. We want to feel right. We want our opinion to matter, and we want the other person to be wrong. And that our society is kind of set up that way. I mean, whether it's a sports team or a political party, we are right and they are wrong. So they really looked at that, and that uncovered are some of those myths about forgiveness. Because guess what? We don't have to be right or wrong to forgive. It's really is a myth. And when I clear that up with people, it's a little bit of a weight off their chest, because when they realize that it didn't have anything to do with the other person, which is like somewhat of a gasp, right? Like, oh, you mean they aren't supposed to fix something? And ultimately, they can't fix something from the outside that is your inside feelings.
That's right. And it feels good too when you get that weight off your chest, because I mean, it's bad enough, especially with the CV new freshman 19 weight, where it's like we got the extra weight from the whole trapped in the homes, and folks got the weight on top of that with forgiveness. Like, it's really for the person really to let that out, as opposed to forcing the other person to change and hoping they'll change.
Right, because we want the best for others. Actually, most people, I'm going to go on a limb and say 95% of the world are really good humans. And nobody is either all good or all bad. So my brother's a perfect example. If we had just met and I randomly slipped out that I was a twin, which I barely ever did because I didn't want to own him at all. Um, So if I would have told you all the horrible things he did, because it would have showed you, oh, he's just a horrible person. He deserves all the bad things, right? But if I would have told you that he volunteered every month as a chef and cooked for senior citizens, that he learned Braille for a friend who wanted a certain book that wasn't available in Braille, and he typed that whole book out for him. If I told you that he fixed seniors' roofs and took old gentlemen fishing that couldn't do it on their own anymore, what would you all of a sudden, if I told you that, you wouldn't think he was such a bad person anymore, would you?
Nope.
Nope. Which then that wouldn't have served my inner purpose, my pain, because we love to support our pain. And that's exactly what I was doing. I was supporting my pain. Now it's super important here because I get a lot of pushback right here. Is what about all the bad things they did? What about all those other things? Well, it's not just all bad or all good situation. Again, remember I mentioned consequences, right? It
Mm-hmm.
still means that it's okay for you to have boundaries in your life. If there is somebody that is doing something hurtful, that you either don't want to see it, you don't want it in your home, it's not healthy behavior, very common with addiction. Um, you don't have to have that. That's the social consequence because forgiveness is actually an authority. And let me repeat that. There's an authority of forgiveness. You get to take back your power. Instead of waiting for them to magically change, you have the power to forgive them and put boundaries in your life so that you can stay happy and healthy. You can still wish they would be a better person. And I give people a lot of tips on how to kind of, in your heart, mind, and soul so that you can move forward in a kind way. Just because they're horrible doesn't mean you need to be. You can pray for them, you can meditate on them, you can just be kind whenever you do have an interaction, even if it's enforcing a boundary. Super important. But the big piece that I want to share with you has to do with figuring out how to forgive. I answered the how because I know I was stuck, and I guess I'm not the only one who is stuck on the letting it go and how to do that. And it really came to shifting expectations. I mean, we all have expectations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Of
Oh yeah.
everyone. And I mean, we have expectations of people we just met. You probably have an expectation that I at least know what I'm talking about, right? That I've done this before, that I'm going to show up on time, all those things, right? And when somebody doesn't, we get let down. And that's worse if it's somebody you love, right? If even if it's your own child, a spouse, all the things. So I teach people to ask yourself, does this person have the will to meet my expectations? Do they want to? Because, is there something you just don't want to do? There's some, I mean, there's a lot of things I just don't want to do, right? I have a friend who kept asking me to football games all the time, and I finally had to let her off the hook and say, I'm never going to meet your expectation and say yes to the football game. It's just not my deal. Shoe shopping, I'm in. Football game, not so much. So ultimately, I didn't really have the will to do that. I just plain old didn't want to. Then there are the people who want to, they really do. And this is very common in love relationships or friend relationships or even coworker relationships because someone's hired, they want to do the job, right? But ultimately, they don't have the skill. Now, you've probably talked to a few people that have had pretty tough life situations, right?
Left. I was about to say what you're right.
Yeah, right, correct, right. So, of course, because we grow up with an expectation that our parents will be, I don't know, good parents, provide for us, love us, all the things, show up for us. And it's innate in our soul to need that. And if it's a sibling, you're also want, I mean, yes, there's sibling rivalry, but you think that you're going to grow up together. You have similar experiences, all the things, right? But if somebody has addiction issues, mental health issues, or maybe not even the training to do the thing that they said they would going to be to you, like a husband or a wife, or a mother or a father, and they're just horrible at it because they themselves don't have the skill for whatever reason, and you can uncover that when you work through your own story about that person. But people start out with the will, don't have the skill, and then lose their will. That's super important. Let me repeat that if that's okay. Some
On ahead.
people start out with the will, they really want to, But because they don't have the skill, they have addiction issues, mental health issues, lack of training. Hey, and some people's DNA just doesn't match up. They're just not good for that. And they lose their will. And lots of times in parents, and even in my own story, my biological father left before I was 2 and I never saw him again. Found out he had done it to other kids. I have a few other siblings that I didn't know about. But DNA don't lie. That's a whole nother story. But ultimately he left because he didn't have the skill to be a father. He had alcoholism. He didn't from what I've learned, didn't have good examples of what a good dad looked like. He had a severe anger management problem. So I was able to forgive this person I didn't even know by understanding what kind of pain and um, difficulties he dealt with. It doesn't let him off the hook at all for leaving and just not being a very good human, right? It's just not that. But I've also heard some really good stuff about him, how talented he was at building, how smart he was, all that kind of stuff. And it left me with a feeling of gratefulness. And it's hard to stay angry and sad and have smoldering resentment when a little bit of gratefulness comes in. And I did that with my brother and my mother and okay, maybe a few ex-husbands. So ultimately, I realized that I needed to forgive them for not having the skill to be the person I expected them to be. So I would hope that the people who are listening today to your amazing show, which by the way, I tuned into a few, they're awesome. I will tell you if they can just ask themselves, that person that hurt them doesn't let them off the hook. They but did they have the will to meet your totally, and I am sure, acceptable expectation? That's the other thing. Most of us are really reasonable about our expectations. We're really pretty much not crazy. We just want people to be really kind to us and love us and do what in return we think we deserve. And there's a lot around that. What do you think?
Oh yeah, there's a lot around that. You dropped one line, you kind of snuck it in a few minutes ago about how we tend to support our pain. So do you think not knowing how to properly forgive others is I guess, one of the bad side effects of not of actually supporting our pain? Why do you think we support our pain like that?
Well, because our pain hurts and it's ours, and we want acknowledged for that. So that's the other piece about needing the other person to apologize. I get a lot of people who come to me and talk about abusers. I mean, horrible situations, and they just want to feel better. Their pain is so deep that they can't even imagine saying I'm going to forgive the abuser. And by the way, you don't have to. It's a choice. No one's going to make you forgive anyone. But my question to most of my clients and my audiences is very simple. Do you want to feel better? Do you want to have joy in your heart, mind, and soul again? Do you want to be able to, when that person pops in your head, to quote, let it go and push it aside? Well, then it is really important that you learn that tool of forgiveness. And we don't teach our children this. We're really good at, especially siblings or on the playground, if a kid hit another kid or something, we go, you need to say you're sorry. And then the other person goes, you forgive them and all this stuff. And the kids are like, well, I'm going to say I'm sorry, but I'm really not. Right? So because
Yeah.
we haven't learned what a good apology even looks like. On top of that, we haven't taught our children to express their expectations appropriately and say, well, I want this person to be my friend, but I have expectations that they don't hit me, right? Or push me or be mean to me or bully me, that kind of thing. Then you can teach your children what forgiveness really is. It's not about forgiving and forgetting. It's about holding a person to social consequences. So teach the child that, you know what, Billy might not be the person you should be playing with. right? Just you need to put boundaries and say, but still be nice and walk away, right? And you've learned from that situation. Instead, we are just horrible about walking right back in it and expecting the other person to change over and over and over. It's like asking a lion not to bite you. After the first bite and you walk back again, whose fault is it, Dom? Whose fault?
Yeah, definitely my fault.
Yeah, which is super hard to deal with when somebody you love is constantly causing you anguish. And you're like, hold it, why is it my fault? It's not necessarily your fault, but you need to learn to keep yourself safe. That's the tool of forgiveness. That's the authority of forgiveness.
Yeah, folks, that's right. Misty's giving you all the gavel, baby. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. Yes, indeed. All sorts of fabulosity. Gotta love all the stuff that you're doing with that. It's definitely powerful. Definitely powerful indeed. And heck, even helping folks to really get that joy back because joy is where the light happens.
It is. And also, it's a tool you can use the rest of your life. And seriously, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, you can actually walk yourself through that little forgiveness algorithm, which, some people out there ask me what an algorithm is. An algorithm is just a step-by-step process to solve a problem. In the forgiveness algorithm, it's solving unforgiveness, that anger and pain and sadness. So it's a step-by-step process. And once you learn how to do it, it is a tool you can use at work with your current spouse, your ex-spouse, your mother-in-law, all the people, like all the people. And the hardest one, yourself.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, the worst enemy. Worst
The
enemy ever.
worst. Like we beat ourselves up so much, and sometimes we actually deserve it a little bit. If we've done something really horrible, we kind of need to give ourselves a little talking to. But we need to forgive ourselves. Ask ourselves, did I have the will or the skill to meet the expectation of whatever it was, including my own inner expectations? We fail all the time and we beat ourselves up over it when we just need to adjust our expectations of ourselves, or maybe, I don't know, the people around us, all the things, right? And we need to tell other people if we cannot meet their expectations. And, Dom, I have a really wonderful piece of advice. There are a lot of people out there that don't meet our expectations. They really don't. But guess what? A lot of people have the will to do that. You need it's our responsibility to share our expectations with them and ask them, are you willing to meet them? Is this something you can do? And a lot of people say, I want to, but I don't know how. That's the best, because that means they want to learn how. Isn't that awesome? Isn't, because really people do want, especially if you're in a love relationship of any time, friendship or otherwise, to be able to fulfill somebody's expectation of the relationship. And then you can say yes to this or no to that, whatever it is. We need to have expectation conversations.
Yes, indeed. Expectation conversations. So is that a t-shirt or a tagline somewhere in the
There's
Misty
there's a
catalog?
there's a few, we call them Mistyisms.
There we
Um,
go.
I always tell my husband, just put them all on my coffin like big bumper stickers. And because that's pretty much how I talk, in bumper stickers. How about this one? Once you forgive, you can no longer expect what you once expected.
There you go.
That one's deep because you have to kind of think about it a little bit, but you forgive someone because now you have the knowledge that they can't meet your expectations. So you can no longer expect from them what you once did.
Hmm. There we go.
It
There
puts
goes
the
the shovel.
power, yeah, it puts the power back in your hands. See, that's the thing. We do this a lot. I mean, even when we have children, I know I have a lot of children.
Six of them,
And
right?
6, how do you know all this? Do you know about my grandchildren yet?
You got two on the way, right? And you got one right now, right?
How is that? What? Where have you been?
MistyTyme.com.
MistyTime.com. Yes, that's true. I actually have 3 on the way. So I have a set of twins on the way, and then and another one on the way, and then I have one that's already here. And he's, of course, the reward for parenting teenagers. It is grandparenting. But ultimately, when your children are born, you're thinking, oh, doctor, lawyer, change the world kind of human. And then when they're hitting teenagers, you're hoping for a law-abiding citizen, because you have to shift your expectations, because they end up being on their own path. And it's really hard. I have talked with a lot of parents, actually work in adoption a lot.
Hmm.
I sit on a nonprofit board that has to do with adoption. And I teach parents that are either in the foster to adopt system, or even they're adopting babies, right? They have these expectations that things will magically be perfect. And guess what? I don't know. Are you a parent? I didn't find that out about you.
Oh no.
No, no,
Nope,
not a
not
parent.
30 yet. Not in the rush for that. I'm not 30
Not
yet.
in
I'm
a,
good. I'm good. I'm
And it's
good.
funny. My one son turns 30 on Monday, and I'm like, when did that happen? Um,
Well, someone still looks stunning.
So, but ultimately, we set these wishes and dreams and fantasies up, and guess what? They're usually perfectly wonderful. And wouldn't it be beautiful if they all came true? I know when I marry people, when I officiate weddings of people, there's this, everybody is doing that amazing, like, oh, I'm going to have 3 beautiful children, a little house, picket fence, my laundry's always going to be done. We're going to be financially secure. There's going to be no drama. They love everything I do. It doesn't matter if I leave my underwear on the floor, all the things. But the married couples out there that have been married for some time, they go, oh, isn't that cute? Because that's not real life. Real life shows up.
Hmm.
You lose jobs. You have financial issues. You're tired. People don't do the dishes. You have children, and that stress comes on. How about dying parents?
Oh
Parents, you have
yeah.
to deal with illness and sadness, and maybe even your own illness. I know that I've struggled for years with a severe back injury. I broke my back, and my lovely husband, yes, third time's a charm, really is. He
Nice.
he has literally, you know, cleaned up after me and all the things, but there are some people that don't have the skill to do that. It's just not in them. They never learned how. They might not have the compassionate bug. So it really ruins marriages, right? Or situations. So again, we're right back into that will and skill again. So if you have somebody like that, you can step back, and maybe a little empathy will sneak in. I know it did for my brother when I sat and wrote down his story. He went through some terrible abusive situations. I watched them. I was part of them. And his were even worse than mine. And his DNA, he was so broken. He was so broken. And when I realized that, I want you to know that I cried for that little boy that should have had the loving family he deserved the moment he was born. And he didn't get that. And he acted from those brokenness. He acted from that brokenness. He tried to cover it up with alcohol and drugs. And he was raging in pain, raging. Does it mean that those things were okay? They weren't. But I was able to forgive him and really let that go and look at the beautiful work he in heaven and me here that we ultimately do together.
Ah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. The magical mist. So the compassionate bug, is that going to be another mysticism?
I have so many. Uh,
There you go.
ultimately, the will and the skill ends up being something I talk about the most and seems to have the most impact. I train forgiveness hospice providers to facilitate an end of life forgiveness discussion, because we love to put this stuff off, don't we? We love to put
Mhm.
it off. And then at end of life, things become crystal Like they are like,
Yep.
the person is dying and they're like, oh, by the way, I would like to forgive my ex or my uncle that abused me, or I wish my kids would forgive me. I wish so and so. And then it's just kind of left there because of all those myths and misconceptions that we come with. The nurses, doctors, even psychologists come with those, and they haven't had a tool to be able to help that client, that patient. And when they're offered this tool, it is a beautiful thing, I have to tell you, because a lot of work is done at end of life, like the most important work, if you're lucky enough to have that time. And there's even a
Mm.
wonderful, I love studies. I actually used to set up phase 4 studies in my corporate world. And ultimately, there's a great study that talks about the fact that when forgiveness is facilitated between a patient, family, or they're able to forgive themselves before they die, they're people that are left behind have a better grief experience. Now, I don't know if you've lost anyone, but I will tell you it is something that cuts you to your knees. It takes you down in a way that is it's unspeakable. It's
Hmm.
deep, and you think that there were never that deep sadness in your life until you've gone through that type of grief. And if you can help somebody have a better grief experience, be able to recover from that grief sooner, oh, it's so beautiful to see because they feel like they've said all the things. They've got some healing in their own heart. It's really amazing. And I want to say to everyone, if you have unforgiveness on your heart and has to do with your parents or a sibling or somebody who's older that might not be in good health, please, please, please read the forgiveness solution, check my classes, something, learn how to do this. It's a gift you will give yourself as you heal and have a better grief experience when they leave this beautiful planet and cross over. And it is something you can do for them. It's a beautiful gift.
Ah, beautiful. It doesn't even have to be wrapped either. That's the magical
No,
thing about it.
no, it doesn't.
That's
It's
right.
usually wrapped in a few tears. I admit there's usually some good cleansing tears involved.
Oh yeah. Yeah, especially grief. Yeah, because funny enough, we actually had similar, I guess, experience in terms of the grief. Because my father himself, he actually died from Alzheimer's. Like your mother
Oh, I'm
passed
so
away from hers. So
sorry.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
that
so
was
sorry.
wow, 3 years ago now. Can't believe it. Yeah.
Well, that's actually the story I write about in Crappy to Happy. I write about my mother who died of Alzheimer's, and she
Wow.
died just about 4 years ago. So we're right there on that same track. You lose people with Alzheimer's. If anybody out there hasn't ever seen somebody with this horrible disease, you lose them slowly. It's
Mm-hmm.
grief deposited.
Mm-hmm.
It's you see them leave, and it's a spark leaves them, and it's so hard to watch somebody who was so full of life and lose not only their memories but their ability to just see themselves in the world anymore. They don't have that ability. And I am so sorry you went through that. It is heartbreaking. It is heavy. It is deep. And that must have been so difficult for your family.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. One heck of an experience. Funny enough, it actually really gave an example of who to actually look for in a person because of both my mother and my father, they were together for 57 years. And my mom, she's been with them for they basically their whole lives together. And really seeing how they were dedicated to each other, especially my mom and how she was dedicated to him was really inspiring because especially in the last few months when he was at the nursing home, he actually was in a couple of them because of some circumstances and just her having to get a sticker so she could actually have a chance to actually metaphorically claw her way to actually see him every day she could because good luck trying to find a parking space to one of the nursing homes because it was next to a very popular hospital in the Baltimore area and all the parking spaces that were close were abducted and the rest of them were handicap spaces. So yeah, it was really one heck of an experience. It definitely was a learning experience.
Yeah, and each Alzheimer's patient is different. That's the other thing people don't understand.
Hmm.
Even when I was in the nursing world, I used to think, well, if somebody has dementia or Alzheimer's, they won't know it. It'll be fine. And that's wrong. They know they don't know until it
Hmm.
gets to a certain level. But ultimately, you see their fear, and it's just, it truly is very heartbreaking. And I write about that in my piece because I was waiting for my mother to tell me that she was sorry for the 6 husbands and the alcoholism and all the things. When Alzheimer's was a gift for us because she was mad at everyone, all
Oh,
six
wow.
husbands. And yeah, all 6 husbands and most of her children and grandchildren and the neighbor and the lady at the grocery store. My mom could take you out, like, but when her Alzheimer's, it stole some of those memories of all the pain that she had during her life. And she
Mm.
was truly in the moment. I don't know if you experienced with your dad that it was about that moment, no other moment. You talked about the weather, you showed a picture for the 100th time, but it was that moment, right? And one time she looked up at me, and I talk about this in Crappy to Happy. Um, she looked up at me and asked me if I was Misty. And I said, yes, I
Uh,
am Misty. And oh, it's gonna make me teary because I'm just imagining your dad right now too. Um, she looked at me, and when she said that, I said, yes, I'm Misty. And she said, I love you. And
mm.
it was a freeing moment for me because I was able to let go of all the sadness. It doesn't mean that what she did as when I was a child was okay, because it wasn't. But ultimately, I was able to let that go and just see her as a beautiful child of God. It was amazing.
Beautiful thing indeed. Did you ever sing songs together? Because I remember you saying she was a singer at one point.
She wasn't just a singer, that woman. She sang. She was one of those people who were really fun at a party. She had a martini in one hand, a man on another, and she was belting out a song. And I can't even hum straight, like, trust me. So, um, she was actually hit the top 10 in the early 60s. She was on
Wow.
Dot Records, and to the day that she died, the day before she died, she couldn't get out of her bed anymore, but she was singing, and people were coming. She was also in an assisted living by that point, and all the nurses and doctors and staff were coming in the room to hear this amazing voice. So I just know now she's up in heaven and she has at least 6 husbands watching her, and and she has her own stage. So I know that she's fulfilled and happy and is in no more sadness or pain.
Well, amen to that. Amen to that indeed. Amen to that indeed. Yeah. So, since this is far from your first rodeo, is there a question you wish you'd be asked more often when you're on the interview circuit?
Well, I think you've covered a lot of them, actually. I think the question I don't get very often is how do you forgive every day? Like when it happens again, like, because people usually like to do it again, like we get re-injured, right? And people don't ever ask me. They think of forgiveness as a one and done situation, and it's not. Lots of times we have to re-forgive, right? We have to recognize, like, we get hurt. A friend or somebody might have a behavior that we forgave before, and then we see it again and we get all kind of grumpy. We're like, oh, they went, and we have to remember that it's like the lion. We know that, that whole, I think it was Oprah, which I think she's my spirit animal, but she I love that Oprah. Someday she will interview me. I want the universe to hear that. That woman is amazing. But people show you who they are. Believe them. Believe them. And that's the piece that people don't ask me very often about, the re-forgiving.
Yeah, yeah, because that's darn true. Because it's kind of back to the whole flat tire training. Like, we're And I actually just
Exactly.
thought of that during this whole conversation here, which is great that we connected at this time because it's like the whole forgive thing. It's like, yeah, I guess it goes with expectations too, like you mentioned earlier, because some folks, they have no idea and they may even be under the influence and may not just be alcohol, just may be just proper
It
lack of
might be
training.
just their DNA. I mean, we've all met those grumpy humans. Whatever pain they're carrying around, the grumpy human, if they're grumpy all the time, it's not just a one-off kind of day. They're trying to tell you, this is who I am. So if it depends how vested you are, right? If you want to try to fix that, that's a whole nother story. If you want to ask them, but then tell them your expectation. I have an expectation that you're not going to be grumpy with me when I am at the family reunion. And they're going to tell you, sorry, this is who I am. What's your problem? Or they're going to go, oh, was I grumpy? I didn't mean to be grumpy. So lots of people, a lot of us are on autopilot when we come to our behavior, right? So
Hmm.
sometimes if someone kindly asks us if everything's okay, or, hey, I saw that you were this way or that way, or when you said this, it really hurt my feelings. Did you know that? Then you'll find out who they really are. They'll tell you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, yes, indeed. So true indeed. Well, coming down here, before I drop the magical question, got a fun question for you. So, have you done
Okay.
any stand up yet?
Um, that's funny that you say that. I have a few comedy friends actually, and they keep saying that I need to get on that stage. And randomly, am I ever afraid of much, by the way, except for maybe jumping out of my airplane or something like that. Brave, I am super brave. I'll do it anyway, but that is kind of freaking me out. So I do have some stuff written. I do, and it's a whole different formula, than when you're talking in general, right? You have to kind of hit the lines. And I've helped some of my other friends write some of their jokes. And
Okay.
so someday it's gonna happen. It might only be in my bathroom, but it's gonna happen.
Oh, there's got to be someone else other than Misty to hear the jokes. Come on now.
Yeah. Well, my family, I tell them I'm funny all the time. I'm like, that was funny. And they're like, yeah, mom.
Hey, that's my formula for funny too. Think yourself funny and then just spray it out and then see if it works.
If it doesn't work, just keep going and they won't notice.
Exactly. They'll be like, "Oh,
Yeah,
it's just part of the story. It'll work."
it's fair story. It's okay.
Yeah, it's between 9 and 5. It'll work.
Exactly.
Well, speaking of five, if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but this time in 2020 with all of your knowledge and experience and no pandemic, what advice would you give to yourself?
I would, no one has ever asked me that. That is a beautiful question. Um, I would make amends with my brother. I would act like a better human. I would be I would be speaking sooner than I was. Um, there would probably be 6 books by now,
Sweet.
and I would have done the deep soul work sooner. So I would have said, Misty, get up and do this. And I would have learned this sooner. It would have saved me years of pain and maybe an extra marriage.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. With 2 extra hearts, even. Woohoo! So, for those who want to keep in magical contact with the magical mighty Misty, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
Go to mistytyme.com. There's tons of free stuff on there too. You can find the book, The Forgiveness Solution, and in October, the Crappy to Happy link. And there's also a free class that talks about what forgiveness is and is not. There's also what the 2 things I hear the most: how to forgive your family and how to forgive your ex. 2 great, to the point, and I promise there really is flying elephants in it. Take those classes, let me know. You can also contact me if you're looking for speakers now virtually because nobody's together. I promise from here up I will look great. I will be in sweatpants from there down, but you'll
Or
never know.
leggings.
And so if you have a corporation or anything, or even a group, I talk everywhere. So
That's right. That's right. It's time indeed. It's Misty time. So if you want that magical mist in your life, she's there for you. The forgiveness mist. You should probably trademark that.
The forgiveness mist. You come up with MT, the
Yeah.
forgiveness mist, so much. I'm so happy. Because usually my name, horses, dogs, and strippers. Like you don't usually hear Reverend, Death Doula, forgiveness expert.
Funny enough, we didn't even get into the Death Doula. So, any quick updates on what the heck that is? Because you're like the first ever on the show is actually a Death Doula,
Okay, so most people have heard of a birth doula. They're a
right?
coach when a woman is having a baby. A
Hmm.
death doula is a coach for the dying. We help not only the person dying, but also the family. We help them understand all the stuff that hospice is saying. And lots of doulas help with the funeral or wake or memorial service. And wouldn't it be amazing if the person that was helping you with all the planning and getting you through that also knew your person, right? And knew their
Hmm.
deep wishes. We're trained in a lot. We understand all the medicines that hospice uses. So we help you with that because, they come in, they tell you all the stuff and they leave. And under that stressful situation, most of us don't remember. And then ultimately, most of us are grief certified. A lot of us help with grief counseling afterwards. So that's pretty much. Birth doulas help people come into the world. Death doulas help them cross over to the next.
Yeah. I'm so glad he didn't say get out the world because I was about to say, it's like, oh, that would have been perfect.
You're funny.
That's right. I keep the
Yeah.
corn cobs going here. So, any parting words for the folks still listening?
Well, I mean, I'm sure all your listeners who listen to you all the time know you have a fabulous radio voice. You have a
Oh, yeah.
great radio voice. So you are doing what you are supposed to do. You're easy
Oh,
on the
yeah.
ears.
Ah, yes, indeed. That's the mission, to be easy on the ears. At least most times. Sometimes folks just groan when I tell them the tree joke, but that's a whole nother story.
And you have a great laugh also. So if I do stand up, I'll let you know so I can hear that laugh in the front row.
There you go. I'm in. Let me know.
Okay, great.
You already have a fan. You already have a fan. That's right.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.